2018. Manning going deep and intercepted inside the 5-yard line by Jordan Poyer. That's just the sacrifice of numbers is what you have to do, is try and put a ball out that you hope your player can try and get to and make a play on. And boy, that grab by Poyer is wide receiver stuff, isn't it?
The Giants are now 0-2, dropping the Week 2 matchup, the season home opener against the Buffalo Bills, losing 28-14. This was a very long game for the New York Giants. It was a long game for the New York Giants, but, there was some sort of signs and flashes where I felt like, the New York Giants had a good chance to, make a good comeback and possibly even win this game. But, as similarly to the last game against the Dallas Cowboys, we had that first quick touchdown on our first drive, and then after that, it kind of went downhill from there. Our defense got that first 3 and out, similarly to last week against the Dallas Cowboys, and then after that, it went downhill from there. Even with the Dallas Cowboys, the same thing happened with the Buffalo Bills, where after our first 3 and out, we gave up 3-4 straight touchdowns. The Bills were able to mix it up pretty well, where they were able to not only run well against us, but also pass the ball against us as well. And Josh Allen had a pretty decent game. Didn't really light us up in terms of from a touchdown perspective, but he had a high completion percentage, had a quarterback rating of 101. And he was able to find his receivers down open. Josh Allen is a very athletic quarterback, so there were at times where even when we were getting pressure, and I'll get to that in a bit, but even when we were getting pressure, Josh Allen was able to roll out of the pocket, and either, throw the ball away or find receivers open. And some of those plays came on crucial third down situations, or just crucial moments within the Buffalo Bills offensive drives where the Giants need some stops and to create some momentum on that defense, and we weren't able to do so on some of those drives. But let's get right into it. The defense doesn't look any better than it did since the last game. Now, we did play better than we did, but, there's still some patches to fix up. And again, that starts with the fact that we can't get enough consistent pass rush. Now, I want to give some credit to the Giants defense, because this was the first time that I saw us get some pass rush here or there. The pass rush was pedestrian at times, but we got way more pass rush in today's game than we did last week against the Dallas Cowboys. So that was a good sign. We had about 3 to 4 sacks in this game, so that was good as well, because we didn't even touch Dak Prescott last week. But still, there were way more times where Josh Allen was standing up inside the pocket, standing tall, standing true, and was able to find his receivers open. There were way more times of that than there were times of us actually getting pressure to Josh Allen. And again, as I've stated before, and everyone else knows this, right? I'm not a genius about this. If a quarterback has more time to find his wide receivers open, then that gives more time for the DBs to have to cover these fast wide receivers. DBs, that's probably one of the more toughest jobs to do, and to make defensive linemen make DBs' jobs harder if they can't get to the quarterback. And our young secondary, our inexperienced secondary, got burned again on some very crucial plays. This is not going to change. Everyone is going to blame Eli Manning for this loss, but this is not going to change. We gave up 28 points. Okay, you can't win in the NFL by giving up 28 points. Eli Manning is not out there playing on the defensive line. He's not out there playing as a DB. He's not the defensive coordinator. Eli Manning did not give up 28 points. And I'll get to Eli Manning and I'll get to the offense, because there's criticism that's due there, but I'm looking all over social media, and people are screaming for Eli Manning to be benched and for Daniel Jones to start. And look, I want Daniel Jones to eventually start, but I would have wanted Daniel Jones to start if Eli Manning was playing garbage. It's not all on Eli Manning, and I want everyone to sort of just get over it and come back to earth. And that's why this episode is very, very important, is because I just also had a very big argument on social media with somebody and other fans that thought that I was some delusional New York Giants fan, some delusional Eli Manning rider that wants him to play forever. And these folks know nothing about me or my podcast, and they thought that. But that's not the case. I saw the game. It wasn't all on Eli Manning. This Giants defense is just not equipped. We have one of the worst defenses. It looked bad out there. And the times we did get pressure on, and I mentioned that we got pressure on Josh Allen, those times were because James Betcher actually had to dial up some blitz plays, some blitz packages. But other than that, we can't play ball. Like, our defense is not good enough right now. DeAndre Baker is still making these stupid mistakes. And Jabril Peppers, again, in the second game, where was Jabril Peppers? A non-impact player. This was the guy we were supposed to hang our hat on off that trade with the Cleveland Browns when we traded OBJ. And I even said, I told folks, hey, Jabril Peppers is a good player. He can play similar to Landon Collins. But he's nowhere to be found on the screen. It's almost as if I forget he's on the team. And every time I do see Jabril Peppers, it's because he's giving up a play or he's getting manhandled on a block when there's a run play for a big gain. I don't understand what's going on, and I'm going to blame James Betcher. I'm coming for James Betcher's head right now because James Betcher he's just not calling the right plays for this talent. I think James Betcher is so deep into the weeds of installing his 3-4 defense, installing his sort of defensive philosophy instead of looking at his personnel, taking a step back, evaluating the type of talent that he has. And sort of making that decision to say, I need to change up the way I'm calling these defensive plays. I need to change up the way I'm lining up my personnel because the vision that I currently have isn't working. The players can't. If your system isn't fitting the players, then create a system where your players can fit into. James Betcher's on the clock. If this defense plays like this the rest of the year, James Betcher has to go. Because this is year 2 where our defense is completely crappy. This is year 2 where our defense cannot ball. And our defense, this is probably the worst defense I've ever seen in a very long time. I don't remember how bad, like the last time our defense was this bad. And DeAndre Baker is still playing bad. DeAndre Baker is getting burned on these routes again. DeAndre Baker's making stupid mistakes and stupid decisions. There's a big gain to Cole Beasley down the sideline. On that play, DeAndre Baker is the DB on the sideline. That matchup is between DeAndre Baker and Cole Beasley. But what ends up happening is there was a tight end that was lined up in the slot. And as that play progressed, instead of DeAndre Baker sticking with Cole Beasley, he bites for the tight end. But there's a safety there to cover the tight end in the event that Josh Allen decides to throw the ball to the tight end. It was just I don't understand how you miss an assignment like that. That's got to be DB 101. That's just such easy defensive assignments. How do you miss something like that? It's not like there's a pick. It's not like Cole Beasley and the tight end were running crossing routes and you sort of get mixed up with the assignments there. You just have to run your pace and stay course with Cole Beasley, and he's wide open for a huge game. Could have been 30, 40-yard gain. I mean, it's little things like that if you prevent big plays from happening like that, you find yourself on better situations to prevent the defense from continuously moving the ball down the field. The NFL game is won by momentum. When you have big plays, that creates momentum. Whether it's big plays off of missed assignments or not, it's still momentum nevertheless. Some of the stuff that DeAndre Baker's doing out there is just cringeworthy. And then don't get me started on the other rookie, Dexter Lawrence, for making a play on the center on a field goal. I mean, everyone knows you can't touch the center on a field goal because he's a defenseless player. I don't understand these people. I just don't understand what they're teaching there. This team looks so poorly coached. And especially defensively. And I said this again, I said this before. James Betcher, he's on the clock now. Several episodes ago, I sort of had a episode describing, my expectations of both Pat Shurmur from an offensive standpoint and James Betcher from a defensive standpoint. And I said this. I said if James Betcher can't make this defense a top 15 defense, if James Betcher doesn't show significant improvement, he's got to go. And he's going to be on the hot seat. And I think he'll officially be on the hot seat from, where all the reporters start talking about it, all the NFL panelists will start talking about it, if we end up going 0-3 against Tampa Bay next week. And if we go 0-3 against Tampa Bay next week, and it's because of our defense, James Bettcher will certainly be on the hot seat. And I want to talk about the offense. Everyone's blaming Eli Manning. I know Eli Manning didn't have the greatest game. I know there were throws or receivers he may have missed. I know some of the balls that he threw were wide off. But Eli Manning wasn't the reason why we lost the game. I thought at times, look, we finally mixed up the run. But Saquon still did not get enough touches. 17 rushes. I want Saquon to break that 20 rush number. I want Saquon to get 20 carries. But that's not the reason why we lost. I thought they still used Saquon way better than they used them against the Dallas Cowboys. So we got what we want from that perspective. But we didn't have our receivers. Shepard's out. Golden Tate is out. Corey Coleman is out. Those guys are number 1, number 2, and number 3 wide receivers. And someone who's going to be potentially number 4 wide receiver, Darius Slayton, he was out as well. We don't have enough talent out there. Evan Ingram wasn't involved in the game plan, and that's all on Pat Shurmur. Your next best receiving option isn't involved in the game plan. He was lost. He was nowhere to be found on the screen. And I understand that because our elite wide receivers aren't playing in the game, it makes it that much easier to defend Evan Ingram. But Pat Shurmur, this is where your expertise as an offensive coordinator and from your past to find ways and draw up plays to get Evan Ingram open. And I'm going to mention a coach that a lot of people sort of did not like and were happy that got fired, Ben McAdoo. Say what you want to say about Ben McAdoo and how bad of a coach he was, but when we didn't have receiving options, Odell Beckham Jr. still found a way to be explosive. Odell Beckham Jr. still found a way to have historical years. Odell Beckham's first 2-3 years in the NFL were historical, record-breaking years. And it's because Ben McAdoo found ways to draw plays to get Odell Beckham the ball and get him open in space. And that's what Pat Shurmur has failed to show me that he can do. Pat Shurmur has not shown me the capability that he can do that for his offensive players. He didn't show it to me last week. And that's why Sterling Shepard had, 6 catches for 40-something yards? And he didn't show it this week. I mean, where was Evan Ingram in the game plan? We want to use Saquon Barkley better in the pass game. I don't see you guys using him better in the pass game. Stop running these screen plays. I've never seen the New York Giants run so many screen plays in the last 2 weeks. This is not good game planning. Stop calling for you run trips bunches, or you have 3 wide receivers or 4 wide receiver sets, and then you have half of your wide receivers just running to the flats. When you have half your wide receivers running to the flats, you can only rely on 2 wide receivers to get you to run routes that will get you into the first down. And because we don't have Sterling Shepard or Golden Tate, those other 2 wide receivers are Benny Fowler and Cody Latimer, who would never be considered as number 1, number 2, or even 3rd wide receiver options on any other NFL roster. Play calling was a big issue here. The lack of wide receiver talent in today's game was a big issue here. The fact that we were facing the number 1 defense in the NFL, the Buffalo Bills, and we still managed to move the ball up and down the field. There were still times where we moved the ball up and down the field. And now the crazy stat about this is, even though we were getting first downs here or there, the first time we ever got into the red zone was in the 3rd quarter. Now you tell me, is that on Eli Manning? That can't all be on Eli Manning. If you go through one whole half and you don't realize that your team couldn't get into the red zone, I mean, that is an adjustment needs to be made. Someone needs to identify that and make an adjustment. Where does that come from? Whose responsibility is that? That's Pat Shurmur's responsibility. Shurmur, you came in as the head coach with the reputation that you were an offensive mastermind, a quarterback mastermind. 2 games in a row, we haven't even broke the 20-point mark. We scored 17 against Dallas. We scored 14 against the Buffalo Bills. Both good defenses back-to-back. So I'm going to give credit where it's due. We faced some tough defenses. But we have to break 20 points because our defense is allowing 28 points and 35 points. Shurmur needs to figure it out. Shurmur, coach up your team. We had 6 penalties for 39 yards. We essentially gave up 4 first down worth of yardage because of 6 stupid-ass penalties. But no, that's on Eli. Because Eli misses a couple of plays here or there, Eli's done. It's not Eli's fault that our receivers are dropping passes. It's not Eli's fault that we don't have enough wide receiver talent out there to create separation. See, a lot of people, they don't want to know, they don't understand the fact that Tre'Davious White, the DB, the cornerback for the Buffalo Bills, is a top 3 defensive back in the NFL. They don't know how deep the secondary is with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. Then you got Tremaine Edmonds, who's one of the most rising star linebackers in the NFL. And then that whole front 7 as a whole. And you know, our offensive line did a great job protecting Eli Manning. We did a pretty good job protecting Eli Manning. Eli Manning didn't get sacked a lot. He did get pressured here or there, but Eli Manning, for the most part, was able to stay tall, stay true, and sort of look for his wide receivers. But you know what? If your wide receivers aren't talented enough to create separation, that's not on Eli Manning. We had T.J. Jones in there who got designated to, I think, our practice squad, and then we re-signed him because Shepard was out with the concussion. We have guys out there that wouldn't be either. This is what our wide receiver talent was today on that football field. We had either players that would be on the bench or wouldn't even be signed or considered for being on another team. Why wasn't T.J. Jones signed after the Giants decided not to pick him up? There's a reason why, because he's not that good. Why is it that Russell Shepard, who is also getting a lot of playing time, continuously plays for the Giants in preseason and never gets picked up during the regular season when they have to decide their 53-man roster? No other team picks him up. There's a reason why. Folks, this game is not all on Eli Manning. When your tight end is by far your best receiving option on your offense, that's an issue. You can't stretch the field with the tight end the way you can with a deep burner. That's our issue right now, and that's what it was. And this is not all on Eli Manning. Now I'll say this: there were a couple of plays that I thought were some bad throws from Eli Manning. Right before we converted that 4th down, a conversion where there was a slant route by Cody Latimer. It was about 4th and 2, and then there was a slant route to Cody Latimer, and then we converted that 4th down. Right before that play, Evan Ingram rolled out to the sideline. He essentially ran to the flats, out to the sideline. And I just felt like Eli Manning sort of panicked and went for Evan Ingram right away instead of sort of surveying the field and looking for other wide receiver options. I thought that was a bad throw. Also, we were down 28-14. And Eli Manning, for some odd reason, after we're driving the ball down the field, we're about at our 40-yard line because this is at the end of the game, by the way. This is the last drive, this is sort of the second to last drive. And Eli Manning hits Evan Ingram wide open after he rolls out of the pocket. We were within the inside of the 10-yard line, and Eli Manning rolls out, is getting chased by some defensive linemen, slings it to, sort of lobs it up to Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram catches it, and it was about a good 40-yard gain. We're on our own 40-yard line, and then for some weird reason, Eli Manning decides to chuck the ball to who I think was Benny Fowler on a go route, and it was almost in double-triple coverage, but he completely overthrows it, leading to Jordan Poyer making the sort of the game-winning interception. But there's still about a little under 4 minutes left, and we were at our own 40-yard line. We made great progress during that drive. And that was the one throw that I didn't like from Eli Manning. I thought Eli Manning panicked and it took too much bad of a chance. I thought we still had time to maybe score right before the 2-minute warning or just in time for the 2-minute warning in hopes of sort of the Buffalo Bills getting the ball back and then us making a quick stop. And then maybe Eli Manning has 1:30 to drive the ball down the field again. And then maybe we score another touchdown and force the game into overtime. That's where I think Eli Manning had messed up. Other than that, I don't think Eli Manning had a terrible game. Because that very first interception, it was a tipped pass from Ed Oliver. The tipped pass that landed right into Trent Murphy's hands, the other defensive end for the Buffalo Bills. But I do want to say this. Eli Manning threw a couple of passes today that were tipped. Usually you don't see that. You don't see a quarterback throw, more than maybe one pass that gets tipped. How many tipped passes did Eli Manning throw? About almost 5? That's one too many. I think Eli Manning also has to understand to make an adjustment. And there were other throws when after you see the replay, you see that when the defensive tackle or the defensive end tries to go for the swat, he gets pretty close to swatting that ball down again. And I think Eli Manning just has to understand that because this is something, this is a tendency that's occurring during the game. Maybe you make an adjustment with how you're releasing the ball. So that's another fault on Eli Manning. So I'm not completely trying to take the blame off of Eli Manning, because Eli Manning didn't make the greatest decisions, didn't always make the greatest throws. But it's not all on Eli Manning, right? We had 6 penalties for 39 yards. Again, that's pretty much 40 yards, and that's 4 first downs worth of yardage. Our defense couldn't make stops. When defenses continue to give touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, that takes the offense out of the groove. We gave up 150 rushing yards. When you give up 150 rushing yards, you know what that means? That means the Buffalo Bills had long, sustaining drives because they ran the ball enough to sort of drive down the field. I don't think we gave up too many big passing plays. The Buffalo Bills were gradually working towards a first down. That's what I saw all game long. Here or there, we gave up some big plays, but I think overall they mixed it a lot with the running and passing because they were running effectively against us. And now on to week 3, heading to Tampa to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I want to sort of rewind because I did several weeks ago, I did an episode to cover a week-by-week, game-by-game win-loss prediction. I had the New York Giants dropping the week 1 matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. I even had the New York Giants losing week 2 against the Buffalo Bills. So, in a way, we're right on track. No surprises there. I expected the Giants to lose these past 2 games, so no surprises there. We lost to good teams. I actually have us winning our very first game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers team isn't as talented as the Dallas Cowboys and the Buffalo Bills. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers team doesn't have nowhere near of a good offensive line the way the Dallas Cowboys do. They don't have a good running game the way the Dallas Cowboys do. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers team's defense is nowhere near the defense of the Dallas Cowboys and the Buffalo Bills. So if you think about it, this is the worst team we faced so far. And now if you want to compare from an overall competitive standpoint, we were way more competitive today against the Buffalo Bills than we were against the Dallas Cowboys. We were technically still in the game, and there was a possibility, a small chance, but there's a possibility that we may have even came out with a victory today against the Buffalo Bills. But we just have too young of a team all over this roster, and that's why we weren't able to sort of hone in on a lot of our assignments and execute the way the coaches wanted us to execute. But I think Tampa Bay is the first team that we'll get our victory against. I think, we won't have trouble, sort of defending the run game with Peyton Barber and that offensive line of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think we'll be able to have more success against that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line because that offensive line isn't as good as the Cowboys offensive line or the Buffalo Bills offensive line, which we registered 3 sacks against. The passing game is where we'll have a struggle, but Jameis Winston isn't that great of a quarterback. Okay, he does a lot of heat check throws, and he's not as mobile. We faced 2 mobile quarterbacks. Jameis Winston is not a mobile quarterback. Got little blitzes. Jameis Winston won't be able to get away from the pressure. He won't be able to roll out, scramble and stiff arm our defensive ends and linebackers the way Josh Allen was able to. Jameis Winston is going to be an easy quarterback to take down. And you know what? Maybe Jameis Winston tries to move around the pocket and probably throws a bad ball, and that'll create our very first interception. Because we haven't been able to sort of force turnovers yet in the first 2 weeks. James Bettcher should have a good game and a good, easy game plan against this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. And I know the Tampa Bay Buccaneer offense has some studs at wide receiver and tight end. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and O.J. Howard. Those guys are going to be hard to defend. Don't get me wrong. That's going to be a tough task for our young, secondary, as it has been this game against the Bills and the Week 1 matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. However, those 2 teams are more complete offensively than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers don't have a good enough offensive line. They don't have a good enough run game. And I think because of those 2 factors, we'll be able to be more successful, our front 7, on getting into that backfield and rushing the passer. I wouldn't be surprised if we get about 5 sacks. I do think 3 sacks is our floor and 5 sacks is our ceiling. And I think that's the game that we end up getting our first interception of the year. And then from a defensive standpoint, I think this is going to be a cakewalk. I'm not too worried about anyone sort of getting pressure on Eli Manning because as we've seen the last 2 games, Eli Manning has barely been touched. Eli Manning has barely been sacked. Saquon Barkley, 2 straight games, has ran for 100 yards against very tough front 7 defenses. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense doesn't have nowhere near of a good front 7 the way those other 2 teams do. So I think Saquon Barkley is again going to have another tremendous game. But I kind of want to see him more consistently, even more utilized. I want them to abuse the way they utilize Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley ended up having 17 touches. I want Saquon Barkley to break that 20 rush number, as I've stated before in this episode. Hopefully Sterling Shepard's healthy, can sort of clear the concussion protocol, because I think if Sterling Shepard is back, we win. We'll have an easier sort of way to win this game. I think if Sterling Shepard is not back, it's going to be a challenge on the offense. And I think that's another point I'd like to talk about really quickly, is the fact that we didn't have Sterling Shepard. It made it that much more harder for us to move down the field for the entire drive, because we were able to manage to get first downs. We did generate first downs. But at one point, our offense stalled out because we couldn't rely on an extra playmaker. We only had Evan Ingram and Saquon Barkley, but I truly believe if Sterling Shepard was in the game, that would have been a big difference maker. So I want all the New York Giants fans to be patient, because our first victory will come soon, and that's going to come next week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's your boy HP. That about wraps it up. I want everyone to follow me on Instagram. That's _unsportsmanlike_conduct. I'm also on Twitter, so everyone please follow me on Twitter. That's _unsportsman. And lastly, but most importantly, if you're listening to this episode, you might as well subscribe. So everyone please subscribe to my YouTube page. It's your boy HP. This is the Unsportsmanlike Conduct Podcast. Peace out. Till next time.